U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says he has hope for a deal that would halt Israel-Hamas fighting in Gaza in exchange for hostages. The draft agreement, which would see hostages exchanged for a temporary ceasefire, is now set to be relayed to Hamas. But the militant group seems to have rejected the deal before it's even been finalized after a senior Hamas official called for a permanent ceasefire instead. We're going to talk more about this with France 24's Iris Mackler, who joins me now live from Jerusalem. Iris, how likely is it that this hostage deal will move forward?
That's the question everyone is asking, Jeannie, because what we know is that there was some optimism, you would say, both from the American negotiators and from the Qatari Prime Minister last night. And the four countries who met, the US, Qatar, Egypt and Israel, in Paris a couple of nights ago, they formulated a deal they could all live with. That's now gone to Hamas. We've heard from Hamas Chief Ismail Haniyeh that they've received it and they're considering it. But the Hamas position is known. It wants a complete end of the fighting, Israel to withdraw from the Gaza Strip, Hamas to remain in power in the Gaza Strip, and then there'll be a release of hostages to be negotiated. That is not what's on offer. What's on offer is something closer to what we saw before, the previous hostage deal. Larger numbers, hopefully, longer period of a ceasefire, larger numbers of hostages to be released, larger numbers, it's understood, of Palestinian prisoners to be exchanged for them. That's Palestinians held in Israeli jails. Will any of this go ahead at the moment? You can see that there's a weariness in Hamas, and if the Israeli figures are right, then there is a great deal of damage to the actual Hamas fighting force. Is that enough to bring an end to this? It's not clear. And at the moment, Israel says that until there's an actual deal agreed to, the fighting continues. And you can see intense fighting in Khan Yunis, possibly moving south to Rafah. Also, we're hearing suggested here.
Now, Iris, in addition to all of that, the UN chief, Antonio Guterres, today is meeting with key donors to the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees. Now, that's after 12 of its staff were accused by Israel of involvement in the October 7th attacks that left 1,200 dead. Several donor countries, including the U.S. and France, have already said they're suspending funding to UNRWA. How big an impact is that going to have in the region?
It's huge for UNRWA, for the Palestinians, and for the region, really, and for the Israel-Palestine conflict, because UNRWA, although it's nominally a UN organization, is actually not a classic UN organization. So it's not funded from UN funds. It's funded by UN member states who put their hands in their pockets, by the way, to the tune of more than $1 billion a year, something like $1.5 billion, to look after Palestinian refugees. So that's why they're horrified, because they've seen the evidence, which Antony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, says is highly, highly credible. It's very worrying to them that they would have been paying the salaries of teachers and social workers who then go and take part in an attack like this. I have weapons. One of the mobile phone messages is a reminder to one of these 12. We've seen their photos published today for the first time. It's a reminder to one of the 12 to simply not to forget to bring his rocket launchers, the ones he has at home. Also allegations of these 12 taking hostages. So you can see why UNRWA responded quickly. You can see why the member states are the ones who are paying for it, specifically the United States, or largely the United States. They're all horrified too. So there will have to be some kind of deal, because the next thing that Antony Blinken said was, nevertheless, at the moment, UNRWA's role is indispensable and there's no one else who can fulfill it in the short term. So perhaps in a longer term, there'll be a restructuring. Palestinians will restructure how they vote, and UNRWA will have to be restructured too, I guess, looking at this.